session, titled it as Pure Efficiency, but we're going to share, Edwina and I, our experience at Monash of implementing Pure at the university, and it's been live for about 2.5 years, and just really focus on the awards management module and the what seems little things and the big difference that it's made for the university. But just to start with, to highlight where Monash is, we're in Australia. Unlike all the other maps, we're not down here in the bottom corner, we're in the centre. Of course, Monash is predominantly based in Australia, but we do also have campuses in Malaysia, in South Africa, and of course one in Prato that everyone wants to go to. And we also have institutes in India and in China. In Australia, Monash is located down in the southern area in Victoria. And just a bit of trivia, so Australia, of course, is the largest island in the world, but also the smallest continent. And for those Americans, the area of Australia is the same size as the United States, excluding Alaska. And for those from Europe, Victoria, the state where Monash is the same size as the entire United Kingdom. Australia only has a population of just under 26 million people, so not a lot of us, and we all live around the coast because it's too hot in the middle, and that's just for kangaroos, emus and the Americans at the satellite tracking station. Monash in Victoria, we have 4 large campuses, the main one being at Clayton, and we have one at Caulfield, our pharmacy college at Parkville, and then our beach resort down at Frankston. We also have a large number of teaching hospitals that we have a big research presence at all of those, so at Monash Health, Alfred Health, Eastern Health and Frankston or Peninsula Health. A bit of stats about Monash. Our student size, we have just over 78,000 students, and staff, it's 8,000 FTE, but about 17,000 head count. We have every discipline you can think of spread throughout our 10 faculties, and our research income is around the $350 million Australian dollars, so a couple hundred American dollars per annum. Just not to disappoint Tony, if he's still in the room, no. We have to put up our rankings, and so of course Monash, we rank up in the top 1% of universities worldwide and in the top 100 in the various global rankings that people cling to. Again, benchmarking, our different disciplines continue to perform in the top 50, and our impact for our citations and our publications continues to grow, up in the 10% most frequently cited. Okay, so the Pure Awards Management module, and really how we came about getting to that product. And where we came from. So we, like many universities, go through cycles, review the systems that you have in place and whether or not they're supporting when you get to the time to upgrade. And when we came around to that time, we took a look at what was out there, and we had a number of challenges when reviewing what we were dealing with. We had a system that was client-server based, so all the data was being collected from the researchers out there and then siphoned away into a database. And we weren't particularly good at sharing that back out with anyone that really needed to use it. And so there was a lot of data held centrally. Because that it wasn't helping people, we ended up building a lot of add-on systems to try and meet individuals' needs to get that data back out to them. And that inevitably meant that people were keeping a lot of information themselves, tracking sheets, spreadsheets, databases, etc., which led to, data being held in multiple places, people having different data, and then when you try to compare, everyone's working off a different song sheet, which caused a lot of problems. Because the systems weren't particularly good at supporting us, we had a predominantly paper-based system, and so there was lots of paper being shuffled around the university, and then we were capturing that information from the paper into the system, which meant we had a lot of data entry, which also led to a lot of data integrity issues. as that data was being captured from different systems around the place. The other issue we had was communications throughout the Institute, how we were doing things and relaying those messages around. Multiple sources, phone calls, emails, whatever we had available. And that really meant that none of that was consolidated with the record of the activity or the award, which also leads to problems when following up or troubleshooting. And really, because the systems weren't supporting the researchers or the research administrators in going about their business, it really meant we ended up duplicating an enormous amount of business process. And there was a lot of inconsistencies too with that business process, depending what the individual faculties or schools or departments thought they needed. And so looking at all those challenges, we went out to see what was out there in the market and what could really support us better in meeting those needs. In making sure that data's out there and available for people to use. This is just a very, very, very simple business process map of how we do things now. And I was reminded talking to Erasmus the other night that when we started looking at systems, we, I guess like many others, came with the long list of things that we thought a system actually had to do. And all those non-negotiables. And sitting down with Rasmus and Klaus at the time, every time we said, does the system do this, can the system do that, how are we going to possibly cope without it, they continually challenged us to go back and look at what we did and whether we really needed to be doing things the way we were doing it. And also wouldn't enter into any discussions about enhancements until we'd demonstrated thoroughly that the system couldn't meet our needs. So we adopted that philosophy, went back and looked at what we were doing, and surprisingly they were right. We managed to question a lot of the things that we were doing and simplify it. And so now, with the implementation, effectively, we have the opportunity for researchers to be inputting information into the system directly themselves. That provides very early visibility to all the users of the system, of what's in the system, who's intending on to apply to what funding schemes, etc. And it means now that we can provide a lot more support to the researchers early on, so we know what their intentions are. We can certainly, at the faculty level, start providing them support to put together applications to funders. We can make sure that all the information they need for that particular scheme is available to them in a timely fashion, which assists them in developing their applications. Within the product, certainly if faculties are using a peer review process, the system can support that as well. And then, as I said, because the various organisation units within the university's got early visibility of the product, of the application, they can also provide support. One of the other challenges that we had is amalgamating all the information as an application develops. And so with the researcher developing the record within Pure, they also need to begin their applications in a funder system. And so now the system enables the researchers to attach all those relevant documents, etc., required for an application, and essentially acts as a container to take it through to the Central Research Office to do all their compliance checking and provide feedback through the electronic approvals process, through to the time that we submit the application to the funder. So just going back to those problems that we had and how the product now has helped us solve that, really going from a client-server system to an internet-based has really opened up the data. And as I said, researchers are now inputting the data into the system themselves at the time of creating the application. But we've gone from a point of having about 20, 30 people in the university having access to this data centrally held, to 200 admin support staff and all the academics. And so now we've made that switch from centrally us owning the data and holding on to that, to the data really belonging to the researchers. And inevitably that means that there are so many more sets of eyes looking at the data and picking up all the mistakes and correcting that, whereas in the past often when we went to migrate our data we found all those mistakes, but now they're being picked up as they're created, which has been a much improvement. I know you can't read this because it's very fine print, but as I said, we had lots of paper sheets, and this was a good example that Klaus and Rasmus's advice came in here. This is this information that we used to capture from a researcher at the time they were about to submit an application to us. And there was lots of information being asked of the researcher. And when we compared that to the fields that we had in the application record for Pure, we began wondering how we were going to possibly capture it all because there was lots of things missing. Going back and reviewing this, we managed to cull about, I'd almost say 3/4. Half of it probably wasn't needed, and we were surprised that the information we were capturing was never used by anyone. Post us capturing it. There was also a lot of information that the researchers were providing that other systems already knew about them, that we didn't have to repeat that. And then there were a number of questions that really we didn't need to be asking at this point. They were only pertinent at the time that an application was successful, and with only 25% applications being successful, we really didn't need to be asking for the information at that time. So now, data's only entered once. It's savable, unlike this form that people used to fill out and then have to print out to get signed off, which means they can build on the information as they go. And we've really reduced the amount of information being asked for. Again, because our systems weren't supporting us for people to do their jobs, they were capturing a lot of information in spreadsheets or tracking sheets. And that was predominantly because they couldn't get the information they needed to do their jobs at hand quickly. And so we were regurgitating a lot of information, a lot of data entry, and people wasting their time so that they had a system to support them. Now within the product, all the information's in one spot, so everyone's looking at the same information as opposed to holding their own sets. And people can filter on the information that is entirely pertinent to them. And so they can use the filters and configure their views accordingly. And again, that information is not just visible to the individuals that are holding it in these spreadsheets, it's visible to everyone that has access within the system. This slide, I'm still kind of embarrassed that we did this, but again, as I said, a lot of paper-based, so there'd be the cover sheet, there'd be copies of the application, there'd be copies of the certifications, and as those documents grew, they were being held in these little boxes, and we would only capture the skeleton information to put that into our research management system at that point in time. And then later, when we found out they were successful, we'd start building the rest of the record because we didn't have the time and the resources at the time of putting through applications to be doing complete data entry. And so we certainly weren't capturing a lot of information on unsuccessful applications. Now, the system record gets created. Every attachment, every piece of information that was pertinent is actually captured, associated to the record. And now, as opposed to it being locked in the cupboard at the end of the corridor, it's available to everyone who has access to the system that needs to see that information, either at the time of it going through the workflow or later on. In addition to that, it's now visible to the researcher, which means it's a great container for the researcher. And now we don't have to go back and scan all of these for the successful ones and put them into our document archives system. Business process. So really this was us, a vacuum in the past, because people only knew what was happening at that particular time that they were touching an application. They didn't know where it was beforehand, they didn't know where it went afterwards, or whether it had progressed through the system. But now with the electronic workflow, people have visibility entirely, and they know from the time that it starts, even before it gets to come to them, where it's at, and they can certainly see whether it's stuck in the system as well and follow up. So there's much more visibility, and important back to the researchers. It saves time, us answering phone calls and answering emails about where things are up to. People have complete visibility themselves now. And following on, coming back to our lovely cover sheet, but this document, and you can imagine on multi-campuses, it used to be produced by the researcher who would print it out, sign it, then they would take it to their head of department, get them to sign it, would then go to the head of school to sign, then it would go to the faculty to sign, and then it would finally make its way to the research office. And once we knew that everyone had signed off, we could submit it. That process on multi-campuses, if they used internal mail, could take weeks and get lost. Now, It's all within the system. People have visibility about who's got the record at that particular time, the names of the individual, and they can contact those if there's a problem. So it's really opened up that entire visibility of where things are at. And we can keep tabs on that. And a lot of people have little filters to see if things are stuck in particular slots for excess amount of time, so they can follow that up personally. Communications was an ongoing issue, as I said. And now we've gone away from the emails and the phone calls and all the missing pieces of paper. The central office, the researchers, the faculty officers, our finance staff are all using the history and comments within the product to keep a full record of what's going on. So not only do you know about your communications with a particular person about the application, you can see the other communications that people are having about the topic and follow the whole history, which makes it much better when you've got to go back to look at the record to find out what has happened. And we deal with about close to 2,000 applications a year going through, so it really has assisted us in keeping a record of what goes on. On the award management side, really it's a simple workflow, but the things that I wanted to touch on, certainly the time it takes to create the awards now, and certainly the ability to track milestones, etc. Previously, at the time of announcements, because we didn't have all the information in a system, we would frantically gather data from the funders' websites, put those back into our treasured spreadsheets, to then try and get quick answers about our success rates and the split amongst faculties. We would then go down the process of collecting all those paper documents, completing the record and the data into the system so that we could then have that data to do some detailed reporting. And that process, which took 4 weeks, now has been cut down. I should say now. Data's ready within 24 hours. Essentially now, as soon as the announcements are made, we just run through the list of applications, mark them as successful, unsuccessful, and then we start updating the award record details with the budgets that were allocated. And so now, within the 48, 72 hours, we're already communicating with researchers, finalising their projects and what they need to do to accept the funding. And so it's greatly reduced the amount of time people were waiting to get some detailed reports on the outcomes from successful funding. Milestones, again, spreadsheets. We all treasured our spreadsheets, but the problem here was everyone had their own spreadsheets just tracking the information that they needed for their particular job. And so you couldn't see what other people were doing, whether other people had moved forwards with particular activities. Now with the milestone functionality, clearly the researcher has visibility of all the milestones that have been created at the time of the award record and what ones they have to action. And then we've created a number of widgets to be put into dashboards for different individuals who are watching specific things. And so now they end up with a list of upcoming activities that they need to action, and by simply clicking on the record can jump in, dive deeper into the award record to get all the pertinent information they need. But for things like invoicing, now the finance people can see whether the researchers have actioned their progress reports, which then triggers them to be able to create their invoice. And when they go in to create an invoice, if they don't see that the researchers have actioned their progress report, they can just follow up with them to find out what's going on and adjust milestones as necessary. This one, another one, is something that is so incredibly simple, but it's had such a dramatic impact for us. But before, just to create a fund, we used to again have a document that we would then regurgitate the information from other sources, put it into this Word document, email it off to our finance people, who would then take that information and put it into our finance record. They would then transpose the information back, send it back to us centrally. We would then send a copy out to all the people that were relevant in the faculties. So we had this cumbersome process, whereas now, essentially, the second that a record is marked as internally approved, it again appears on a widget within a dashboard that our finance people are monitoring constantly, and they then tap on into the record, create the fund number and put that in the system. The second they do that, comments go out to the researchers, to us, to the finance in the faculty, and it moves through. And so this process, again, used to take 2 weeks, we're now to 24 hours. So just the summary of the benefits that we've gone through. For the researcher, it's really having that clear visibility of everything that we've got in the system. And so it's becoming that one-spot stop for them. Certainly they now have the milestones and reminders and notifications, but it really, for the data integrity, they now see all the data that we're holding about them and all the data that's going in for performance and academic performance recording. For the Institute, we now are effectively a paperless work business process, which has been fantastic. Everything's in that one spot, not only for us, but for anyone that needs to see that. So the visibility of the information that we've got in there has been a dramatic shift. Going through all the information that we now capture, the data integrity, it's pumped out to our data lake for our reporting, and it's far more timely and available. And again, reduced effort managing all the information, certainly much faster times, turnaround times and service that we can provide to the researchers. And the real important thing now is that we can now value add to the researchers and support them, as opposed to wasting a lot of time doing data entry and things like that. So that's kind of the benefits that we've got, and that's only half the story, because the journey that we took and how we actually got there and managed to do that across the university the size of Monash is Edwina's domain. So I'll pass it on to Edwina.
Thank you. So there's a lot that was in that. We get asked a lot by a number of institutions and universities around Australia about how we went about it and what we've done. It was a big job. I'm just looking at Rasmus there. He was quite influential, as Simon said, on keeping us sane in the whole wanting to do more with the product. But he, constantly said, "Why? Why do you want to do that? That sounds a bit ridiculous." And we did spend a lot of time reflecting on that. So as I said, we do get asked a lot of questions around this, so I would like to leave some time at the end to give you guys a chance to ask us some questions, because we're always happy to talk about it. This program of work that we did with the research transformation was the biggest enterprise-wide rollout with the largest number of users that the university had done. We've done enterprise system rollouts before, but this one we actually wanted to open it up to the end user, to the researcher, and that was always going to be a challenge. And somebody in the room before mentioned, how do you herd the cats? Well, yeah, that was the challenge. So we started our journey around about 2012, when we realised that what we were spending on supporting research was ridiculously over the top. It was much more expensive than any of the other comparable universities. We did some benchmarking around our group of 8 research institutes in Australia, and realised that we were spending way too much money on this than we needed to, and we had really, really ineffective processes, and we had really, really ineffective ways of working. So we decided that we would spend some time actually articulating what it is that we wanted to do. So we started looking at what we did. We had a consultancy come in and delved right into the depths of what we were doing and how we were spending our time and our effort and our money. They process mapped everything that we did, and I don't think that there's enough wall space in this room for us to be able to print all of that process mapping and present it out here. It was ludicrous. We had individual departments in each faculty that were running processes completely differently. So we realised that we needed to do something different and actually start to come together and operate as a single university, as opposed to 10 different faculties with a number of different organisations within them. So we came up with a couple of sort of, very simplified diagrams of how we were going to do it. And the idea was that we did distribute a lot of this sort of what would be determined as administrative activity out to the researchers, out to the academics, and not get them to fill out cover sheets, get them to actually enter the data into a system that was going to be the end home for that data. We also realised that we needed to, we spent a couple of years kind of having a few false starts with the project, but we realised that we needed to set up the project differently, and we needed to operate differently to roll out this whole project and this implementation. Simon's from the research office, the research office at the university. I'm from the IT area. This program was not led by one or other of us. It was actually, it turned out to be a fantastic partnership between IT and the business. So the IT guys, we did the sort of the system setup, the environment setup, the integration work, all that sort of, jiggery-pokery that IT people do. And the research office and a couple of other internal areas as well, like our contracts management office, our financial area, the research outputs collection service, our ROCS team. So they all came together and they all owned different parts of it from the business perspective. So providing us with requirement, providing us with the, defining the process as it would relate to the system, and helping us with rolling that out into the areas that they had influence over as well. We formed an agile team, so we did operate in an agile way, even though our delivery was not incremental. Our delivery was a big bang, but we did work on different parts of the system in an agile way and deliver it sort of slowly over a period of time. The people that we had involved in this team, they had to own the problem. We wanted people that were actually going to, run with things as well. So again, having people like Simon, and we had a number of different sort of senior managers from a lot of these areas, they were responsible for the outcome from the business perspective. So they were really, really keen to find the solution. And so, we got those guys involved, and that made a massive difference to what we were doing. We also had a strong vision that was articulated. There's a few motherhood statements in there, and it's a little bit sort of wishy-washy, but we could hang everything that we were doing on some aspect of that vision, and that was really important. That was articulated really clearly and very early. It was consistent throughout the whole time that we were running the project, and it was endorsed and understood and communicated by senior executives as well, both academic and professional areas in the university. And that was massively important because they're obviously the guys who have the influence. And I think Eli was saying before, what made the difference is, sometimes it just takes that direction from senior management or executive level to kind of drive the fact that you need to get on board with this program, because we were not going to be effective if we didn't actually have that. The values that we were looking for, we wanted to uplift our professional capability and get those guys removed from, handing paper around or chasing paper down or looking for signatures to actually starting to add value to research, grant writing, for example, or helping early career researchers with looking for appropriate opportunities for them, but getting those professional staff into more value-add activities rather than, filling out spreadsheets and replicating data in a number of different areas. And from processes, we wanted to remove all of the silos that we had. As I said, we had all these different areas that were operating, trying to get the same outcome, but operating completely differently, and it was just ridiculous. We wanted to reduce the amount of funding, as I said, that we spent on all of this activity if it wasn't actually adding value to us. So there are a few drivers in there. So we looked at it as any good project does from the perspective of people, process and system. So from the people side, Simon mentioned that we had all these different sort of areas operating in the same way. We were chasing all these paper applications down. The process went from here to there, and we had all these, getting multiple signatures on a piece of paper was a waste of time. We had the same for output collection. So we had, it might have been 20% of somebody's job for 2 months of the year to start keying in publication data into the system. So it just meant that people weren't upskilling enough. They had to keep upskilling every time there was a cycle where we had to collect information. So the expertise wasn't being developed within our people. So as we centralised some of these services as well, we looked at the research output collection service, for example, the way that we collect outputs. We centralised that service, we took it out of the faculties, and we started to develop that team as a team of experts in this sort of collection process. So they could add value to what they were doing. They could actually start to build expertise in understanding all of the classifications that have to go along with that sort of data set, so that we can report on them appropriately for a number of different things, or classify them appropriately so that they can be, we can use the data in our data lake, for example, and then start to evaluating what we've got in there. So we build expertise in that team. Having a number of different people infrequently adding information into a database means that, the quality of the data recording is not great. So these guys started to develop data standards of how we would record bits of information so that we could start to clean our data as we went into this new system as well. The centralisation process, it started before we actually went live with Pure, but it finished when we went live with Pure. So we started with some friendly faculties that we knew were struggling to either keep up with the volume of work that they had, or they were really keen to just start to come on board early. And we gradually brought the other faculties on board as they saw that the success that we had and the improvement in the process for the other areas. So that's how we approached that one. It's resulted in, as I said, higher level of data quality, and it's actually reduced the peak for all of the faculties that they had. We record this information, we collect this information year round. It's sort of smoothed out a lot of the additional casual staff that we used to have to employ to sort of meet that need. So it's made the whole process a lot more smooth. We've still got most of our research administration activities in some part in the faculties as well, but by reducing the transactional work that they were doing with the paper chasing and everything, it's allowed them to start to support their academics in their local faculty in a much more hands-on and higher value way. So with process, we spent a long time before we actually implemented Pure working through our processes. As I said, we had these ridiculously complicated processes. We spent about 6 months with deans, with ADRs, with senior executives from the university across the board, users. We had 6 months of workshops, which is, you know, sort of still making me shiver every time I think of it. But it was really, really hard work, but it was probably the thing that made us the most successful. We set ourselves up for success by actually understanding what it was that we were trying to get out of it. And from the process perspective, we challenged every single handoff that we had of information. We challenged every single activity that was done. And we ended up with, you know, very, very simplified maps like these. This is not, you know, our most detailed one. We do have another level of detail, but we ended up with maps like these that we could start to communicate to academics about. These are researcher-centric processes. So this is all about the researcher. This is how we sort of started to communicate with them and get them to understand what we were trying to do was going to help them in the long run. We also invented this role in the project called a business process owner. So Simon is one of those. Sian, who's our other colleague who's here, she's another business process owner. So these were people that were had skin in the game in what we were trying to deliver. They were challenging us in terms of what the system would provide, and they were challenging Rasmus quite a bit too to try and get it to provide more. But it was their decision to work out whether we sort of pushed the product as much as we did or whether we changed the process in the way that we did. But they're still involved in this whole sort of research program. They're still responsible for how the process is implemented in the university. And it's been, you know, having somebody who's taking the ownership of that and taking responsibility for that, even though it might be just a section of what the whole product provides, is really, again, it was a massively successful way of approaching it. In some of the other massive programs that we're doing at the university, we're trying to basically do the same thing for student administration at the moment. Again, we're looking at this sort of model to roll out so that we can start to get some traction on some of those other larger programs. And with systems, as Simon showed you before, we had many, many systems and many, many spreadsheets and many people recording information all over the place. So one of the drivers for us was to just have, from the IT perspective, was we couldn't support all of that. We didn't even know that half of it existed until we put Pure in, and then people were telling us that we needed to decommission things. So, you know, that's not a great place to be. It introduces a huge amount of risk. So just by using one system where you could record all this information, that was going to obviously mitigate a lot of that risk. What it didn't allow us to do initially, and we sort of had to play around with this quite a bit, was to give everybody the visibility that they were used to. So if you're running your own spreadsheet, obviously it shows you all the information that you want. When we rolled out Pure, the roles were not, they didn't provide us with as much flexibility as what we wanted to, so that we could just provide information to certain subgroups of people. So we had to really challenge ourselves with that, and we were quite fearful that opening up the system to a number of, you know, larger numbers of people to give them access to the information that they could then edit, even though we just wanted them to see it, was going to be a problem. So that, you know, that sort of made us uncomfortable for a little bit, but going live with it, because you've got no choice, and sort of implementing it that way and having people understand it, you know, I don't know what we were worried about, because it hasn't actually been a problem, and it's allowed us to to get more, as Simon said, more eyes on the information, more eyes on the data, they can then correct it themselves. They don't have to come back to somebody else because we've given them a view-only role. So, you know, sometimes we might initially see the limitation of a product as being something that we're a bit fearful of. It's turned out to be absolutely not a problem, and it's actually allowed us to work in a way that's more effective for us anyway. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes the limitation is still a problem. Just thought while I've got the microphone, I might mention that, JC. So we did have a lot of challenges, but one of the biggest ones was time, actually giving ourselves enough time to do the work that we wanted to do, getting the time of the senior executives and the people like Simon and some of the other directors that we had in the program, getting the time to really think about it and to digest things, mull them over, and really understand what it is that you want to do and the way to go forward. The senior support was, in our case for this program, it was reasonably good. We did have some pretty solid senior support, but getting the senior support from the faculties and from the deans and the academics, that was a real challenge, getting them on board with what we were doing. And eventually we sort of got there. We had to specify the clear need, so actually getting a common understanding of what that clear need was. I mean, it took us 4 years of really delving into what our problems were to be able to articulate it in a really simple, elevator pitch sort of way. Again, that sort of leads with time. You've got to kind of mull it over to really distill all of the problems that you've got down into a clear need, and that again took us a while, and it was a challenge. And then getting people to really simplify. So, hats off to Rasmus. Forcing us to simplify was probably what we needed at the time. But just getting people into that mindset where you always have a belt and braces sort of risk mitigation kind of thing. So we just had to sort of be forced into it, and that really, really made the difference and has helped us improve our processes enormously. Challenges with academics. I know Simon mentioned a few of these before, but we had to find what was in it for them. We used huge numbers of different communication methods. We went to all of their faculty meetings. We went to, had one-on-one meetings with deans, senior academics. Every time that we went out, we always said that we were going to be honest about what we were doing. We didn't try to cover up the fact that this system was not going to deliver everything that they wanted. They would have had bells and whistles coming out the wazoo for this, but we always went out there and said it's not going to do this, but it's going to do this. And where we were sort of, questioning the way that we would approach it, we'd talk to them about it. So the communication methods were really, really important, and the frequency of communication, constantly keeping them in the loop. We had to find selling points for each individual type of person that was going to be using it. So, some of the academics loved the idea of the profile. Some loved the idea of the milestones. Some loved the distribution of the information to all of the people that are working with them. One of the academics actually said to us after a demonstration that it was the best system he's never going to have to use because he can use trusted user functionality. So he was rapt about that. So, we were finding all these different ways of trying to sell the product to them. The workflow and the fact that they wouldn't have to then, keep track of their paperwork, that was a winner for pretty much everybody. We also made it really hard to use other things. So in some cases, impossible. We just took it away. So the cover sheet was a good one. People were going, well, how are we going to print this thing off Pure? We need to have a hard copy of this. We said, no, you can't do it. We're not going to let you do it. And we're not going to give you a backup. We're not going to give you a cover sheet. So, it was like ripping off a Band-Aid. It might have been painful for a very small amount of time. But the ones who didn't want to engage with it would just, make somebody else a trusted user so they didn't have to worry about it. So again, but it makes the system work for the university. We did collaborate a lot with people, and we asked a lot of questions of what it is that they wanted to do, but again, really challenged all of our users about why they were trying to ask for certain things, mainly because we were being challenged every week by Elsevier. But we did really have to distill it down into the sort of fundamentals and show that we were listening to people as we were delivering this product. And we removed IT from it being the face of the system implementation, which was dreadful for my ego, but it was what I think another thing that made it really successful. It wasn't seen as us as a IT person shoving some technology down the throat of a user. we were being really collaborative and partnering with all of the business units. And every time we had to sort of roll a piece of functionality out or train people, it was, you know, guys like Simon or Sean Meehan, who was our director of the contracts office, who would go and actually do the training with the user groups and everything. So we were essentially sitting behind the, you know, not visible to anything, which was, you know, great. It was fine. The other challenge that we had was actually reimagining how we do things. So how do you really not just lift and shift your existing ways of working into new technology? Like, that's, I think, what we were trying to do initially. We had every single question on that cover sheet that we wanted replicated, but we didn't use half the information. So, you know, getting that mind shift change was really, really difficult. We ended up starting with, you know, small changes and having the team start with small successes in ways that they were solving problems. And that seemed to breed success. And I think what it's actually done is, because we had such a strong partnership with the business, it's helped those sort of business units to, like the research office, to start challenging everything that they do continually. So Simon's team are always asking, you know, trying new things with the system, particularly around reporting and extracting data. They're trying new ways of trying to pull information together. They're using widgets in all sorts of different ways. You know, they're really, really fantastic users to help you understand how to use a product. And we've now got faculties wanting to do the same thing. So we're trying to support them in getting them to self-service and really challenge the way that they're working, using this as a tool for it. It's a bit of a slow burn, but once the momentum starts, it starts to really roll. So it's great. These are people, these are my team. So this is the factor for success. We had great people, we hand-selected people, and we got a fantastic team. We had very lightweight governance over our project, so we removed any unnecessary impediments that were going to slow us down with committee meetings or something, or things like that. We learnt as we went, we constantly challenged ourselves. We had a really strong sense of humour to get through all of this. We ate a huge amount of candy, chocolate, you name it, we ate it. We showcased our progress as well. So as I said, we communicated to the wider university audience. It wasn't just to the users. We had these forums where we would let anybody turn up. And at the end of our project, which was around about 9 months of the pure implementation, we had over 100 people turning up to these things. So there was a lot of momentum. It was a fantastic opportunity for people to see how well a good, strong partnership can work. And where we are now, unfortunately in this map, we're down on the side. But I hope everybody's taking note of that it might need to change in the future. We have around 8,900 personal users using the system. In the last 12 months, we've had nearly 5,000 unique users active in the system. We have over 200,000 outputs, 24,000 projects, and over 6,000 profiles of researchers. So there's a lot of information and a lot of data in there. We're still working together with the Research Office very, very closely. We're looking at some other projects, extracting data from Pure to use in AI and bot functions. We're working on improving the ERA functionality and working on our little own piece of technology that sits alongside ERA. So we're doing lots of projects still with the Research Office. And we're continuing to help the academics in ways of learning how to use the system better. We'd like to get more data in the profile space so that we can really promote what they do, particularly in the biography area. So we've still got lots and lots of things to do, but that's pretty much how we made it work. And we're still talking to each other, so that's good. So I'll leave it at that. Has anybody got any questions or anything they want to clarify?
We actually have one question from online, if it's
okay. Yep.
And I think it's maybe to both you, Edwina and Simon. Have you done any attempt at quantification of the efficiency gains, either on an individual researcher or at more aggregate scale?
That's a great question. I'll leave that to Simon.
I was going to say that it's a difficult thing because we hadn't measured the baseline to start with. And without having that, there's lots of anecdotal evidence of individual things where we've had massive changes. So no, we haven't gone back.
Time for at least one or two more questions.
Thank you. Edwina and Simon, a question to both of you. I have this idea that often the most successful implementations is collaboration between IT, Research Office, and the library. You didn't mention the library in your talk. Could you maybe talk about the library's involvement or not, and why?
I was going to say it depends on how things are being managed at the institute. So a lot of libraries at other institutes deal with the publications, whereas we have a separate unit that deals with that. But we have, as you can probably jump into the next bit, but we do engage the library with regards to looking at the repository and that information. But with the awards management, they weren't involved. With publications, we have a separate unit that deals with that. So yes, the library are involved.
So we have, as Simon said, we have involved the library for most of what we've been doing. So we do have Figshare hooked up, so they were involved in that. We've just been working on them with the open access indicators as well. So they do, where it makes sense for the way that we work at Monash, they are quite involved.